Hello, survivors. Thanks for joining us today. Before we begin, if you enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot. Also, tell us in the comments which city you're listening from. It's great to see how far our community reaches. Now, let's start the story. The coffee was lukewarm, third cup of the morning, tasting faintly of burnt plastic like it always did from the truck stop thermos. Didn't matter. Caffeine was caffeine, and I had another 400 miles of asphalt to eat before hitting the distribution center outside Chicago. My rig, a Freightliner Cascadia I called the Wanderer, rumbled steadily across the St. Jude Bridge, the morning sun just starting to peek over the city skyline behind me, painting the underside of the clouds pink and orange. Another Tuesday, another load. Electronics this time, bound for some big box store. Routine. That's what trucking is. 99% routine boredom punctuated by brief moments of sheer panic when some four-wheeler cuts you off without signaling. Or so I thought. The first sign something was off wasn't visual, it was auditory. The radio. Usually around 7 a.m. near a major city, the airwaves are humming. News, traffic reports, that annoying morning zoo crew. Today, mostly, static. Found one station. Sounded like a college kid reading emergency alerts between bursts of static. Something about a hospital quarantine downtown. Reports of unusual aggression. Sounded like maybe a bad batch of drugs hit the street. Happened before. Then the traffic report came on. Garbled, but mentioning multiple pileups on the connector ramps leading off the bridge on the far side, the side I was heading towards. Strange for this early. Traffic slowed. Not unusual on the St. Jude, it's a bottleneck even on good days. But then it stopped. Dead stop. Engine brakes hissed, air brakes sighed. Ahead of me, maybe half a mile of cars, trucks, SUVs, all stationary. Behind me, the same story, the bridge filling up fast. We were packed tight, 6 lanes wide across the main span. I checked my mirrors, more cars pouring onto the on-ramp behind me. No way forward, no way back. Typical bridge jam, I figured. Give it 20 minutes. 20 minutes stretched into 30, then 45. People started getting out of their cars, walking around trying to see what the holdup was. Impatient honking started, a useless symphony of frustration. That's when the screaming began. Not the angry screams of road rage, but pure terror. It started near the front of the jam, maybe a quarter mile ahead of me, then rippled backward through the trapped vehicles. People were running now, scrambling away, from something up ahead, some trying to climb over cars, others just freezing in place. My cab sits high. I've got a good vantage point. I grabbed the binoculars I keep under the seat for checking road signs way down the highway, focused them on the source of the commotion. What I saw didn't make sense. A man, dressed in business attire, was attacking another man, biting him, tearing at his clothes with a feral intensity I'd never seen outside of a nature documentary. The victim went down and the attacker just kept going. Then the victim started convulsing like he was having a seizure. A few seconds later, he lurched back up, eyes wide and vacant, and lunged at a woman who was trying to pull the first attacker off. My blood ran cold. This wasn't drugs, this wasn't road rage, this was something else. Something ripped straight from those stupid horror movies my nephew watches. More people were being attacked now, the chaos spreading like fire through dry grass. People who were bitten went down, convulsed, then got back up, joining the attackers. The change was horrifyingly fast, maybe a minute tops. Panic erupted behind me, people trying to turn around, cars scraping against each other, horns blaring incessantly. A multi-car pileup effectively sealed the entrance to the bridge maybe, 100 yards behind my trailer. Wreckage blocked the front too, near where the first attack started. Twisted metal, smoke, flames starting to lick at a fuel tanker that had jackknifed. We were trapped. Boxed in on a 6-lane bridge suspended 150 feet above the choppy gray water of the river. Jesus Christ, I whispered, lowering the binoculars. My hands were shaking. 20 years driving, seen some horrific accidents, dealt with breakdowns in the middle of nowhere, driven through blizzards that would make a polar bear nervous. Never felt fear like this. This was primal. This was the end of the world unfolding right outside my windshield. I locked my doors, the heavy thunk echoing in the suddenly silent cab. The initial wave of panicked screaming had died down, replaced by a more terrifying sound. The low, guttural moans of the newly turned, punctuated by the wet, tearing noises of them feeding on the unfortunate souls who hadn't gotten back into their cars fast enough. Those things, the infected, the biters, whatever they were, they moved with a jerky, unnatural speed. Not the slow shamblers of Romero flicks. These things could run, stumble, lunge. Their movements were wrong, broken, like puppets with tangled strings, but they were fast. My mind raced, sorting through priorities. Survival. Truck is secure. High vantage point. Fuel. Half a tank, enough to idle for days if needed, but not enough to ram my way through the wreckage at both ends. Supplies? Standard trucker kit. Water jugs, emergency rations, first aid, tools, CB radio. Weapon? Tire iron under the bunk. Heavy maglite. Not exactly geared for the apocalypse. My eyes fell on the load manifest. Electronics. Useless. If only it had been canned goods or ammo. Outside, the scene devolved further. The biters swarmed over abandoned cars, shattering windows, pulling people out. Gunshots cracked sporadically, someone trying to fight back. But for every biter that went, down 2 more seemed to rise from the victims. Headshots, it had to be headshots. I saw a guy empty a pistol into a biter's chest. Did nothing. The thing just kept coming until he frantically aimed higher. The CB crackled. Anyone copy? What the hell is going on? Police? Military? Static answered him. I grabbed my eye. Mick, Breaker 19, this is Wanderer on the St. Jude. Bridge is blocked solid, both ends. Got hostiles. Attacking people. Repeat, hostiles attacking civilians. A frantic voice came back. Wanderer, this is Roadhog, trapped about 50 yards behind you. Hostiles? What are you talking about? It's riots, right? Negative. Roadhog, I said, my voice tight. They're changing. People get bit, they turn, they attack. Like in the movies, man. Lock your doors. Silence then. Holy. Another voice, calmer, female. Wanderer, this is Nightingale, blue sedan. Maybe 3 cars ahead on your right, I see them too. What do we do? Nightingale. Sounded like a nurse maybe, or just picked a handle. Stay in your vehicles, I transmitted. Doors locked, stay low. They seem drawn to noise and movement. The bridge was maybe 1.5 miles long. 6 lanes trapped, potentially thousands of people. How many were already turned? How many were hiding like me? How many were dying right now? A movement caught my eye. The blue sedan. A woman, maybe late 30s, dark hair, was cautiously peering over her dashboard, looking toward my rig. Maria, her name tag read, faintly visible through the dusty windshield. That must be Nightingale. She met my gaze, fear etched on her face, and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Contact. Minimal, but contact. Further down, maybe 2 rigs ahead of me, another trucker was trying to organize things. Big guy. Red Peterbilt handle was probably something like Grizzly or Bigfoot. He was out of his cab yelling, trying to get people to form a barricade with their cars. Gary, I later learned. Bad move. The noise drew them instantly. A dozen biters converged on his position. He got back in his truck, but not before one lunged, smashing its head against his side window, leaving a spray of dark, thick fluid. Gary just sat there, frozen behind the wheel. I watched him through the binoculars, saw the sweat bead on his forehead, saw the tremor start in his hands. Then, the convulsions hit. 10 minutes later, the driver's side door of the red Peterbilt opened, and Gary stumbled out, eyes vacant, joining the ranks of the things he'd been trying to fight moments before. Okay, new rule. Stay in the damn truck. The sun climbed higher, beating down on the trapped vehicles. The inside of my cab started to heat up. Running the AC meant running the engine, burning precious fuel. I cracked the windows slightly, just enough for some air, listening to the sounds outside. The moaning was constant now, a low, horrible chorus. Occasionally a scream would cut through it, followed by wet, tearing sounds. I forced myself not to look too closely, focusing instead on scanning the bridge supports, the railings, the water below, any potential escape route, however improbable. The St. Jude is a suspension bridge, massive steel cables draped over towers that soared hundreds of feet into the air. Catwalks ran beneath the road deck for maintenance crews. Could they be accessed? Maybe from the expansion joints? Risky. A fall from this height was certain death. And what waited on the other side? More chaos? I tried the radio again, scanning. Frequencies. News channels were gone, replaced by the emergency broadcast tone or static. Found a faint military frequency. Containment protocols enacted. Sector 7 compromised. Air support authorized for... Static drowned it out. Air support? Did that mean rescue or something worse? A flicker of movement from the blue sedan. Maria was holding up a water bottle, shaking her head. She was already running low. I checked my own supply. 2 gallons. Plus maybe half a gallon. The thermos. Enough for a few days if I rationed carefully. Food, emergency MREs, beef jerky, peanuts. Enough for a week maybe. But how long would we be trapped here? Hours, days? The heat inside the cab became oppressive. Sweat dripped down my back. Outside, the biters milled around, drawn occasionally by a car alarm going off, or someone making a desperate break for it. They were relentless, tireless. They didn't seem affected by the heat. They just kept moving, sniffing the air, listening, waiting. I scanned the vehicles nearby. Most windows were tinted, impossible to see inside. Were people hiding? Or were those cars already tombs? Every so often a window would shatter from the inside, and a newly turned biter would crawl out, adding to the horde. Around noon, a helicopter flew over. Police, not military. It circled the bridge once, twice, then flew off towards the city. Didn't lower a rope, didn't drop supplies, didn't even use a loudspeaker. Just observed and left. Hope, fragile as it was, began to wither. I leaned back against the headrest, closing my eyes for a moment, trying to block out the moans, the heat, the smell of decay that was starting to drift on the air. Trapped. On a steel and concrete island. Surrounded by death, 150 feet above a river that offered no escape. This wasn't just a bad day. This was the end of the line. The afternoon dragged on. A slow-motion horror film played out in the shimmering heat waves rising. From the asphalt, the biters seemed less active in the direct sun, clustering in the shadows beneath trucks and in the narrow spaces between cars. But they never stopped moving entirely. Their low moans were a constant, grating soundtrack to our entrapment. I kept visual contact with Maria in the blue sedan. We developed a crude system of hand signals. Thumbs up, okay for now. Hand flat across the throat, need water. Pointing, threat detected. Mostly, we just watched each other, 2 isolated islands, of sanity in a sea of madness. Knowing someone else was alive, aware, helped, marginally. Around 2:30 p.m., a group of about 5 people, armed with tire irons and baseball bats, made a run for it. They emerged from an SUV trapped near the center span, trying to reach the eastern bridge tower, maybe hoping to climb down. It was suicide. The moment they broke cover, the biters converged. The sound, the movement, it was like ringing a dinner bell. The fight was short, brutal, and ended the only way it could. 5 more. Biters joined the shuffling horde. Nobody else tried leaving their vehicles after that. My CB radio remained mostly silent, save for occasional bursts of static or frantic unanswered calls for help. The bridge felt cut off from the world, a self-contained ecosystem of terror. I started thinking about resources again. Fuel was the main concern. Idling the engine for the CB or a brief blast of AC was burning through my half-tank faster than I liked. The MREs would last, but water was critical, especially in this heat. I scanned the contents of my cab again. Toolbox, logbook, atlas, flashlight, fire extinguisher, The aforementioned tire iron and a flare gun with 3 flares. Standard safety equipment. Not exactly an arsenal. The tire iron felt pitifully inadequate against the things outside. Then I remembered the trailer. Electronics, yeah, but what else? Truckers often stash personal items, extra supplies. It was a long shot, but maybe the shipper had included something useful? Accessing the trailer, however, meant leaving the relative safety of the cab. The trailer doors were at the back, requiring me to climb down, navigate the narrow space between my rig and the car behind me, and expose myself for at least a minute or two. I watched the biters nearby. Most were lurking in the shade cast by my trailer. At least 10 of them within immediate lunging distance. Too risky. Not yet. Around 4 p.m., the sky began to change. Dark clouds gathered rapidly on the western horizon, the direction of the city. The air grew heavy, electric. A storm was rolling in. Good news, maybe? Rain might cool things down, maybe even wash away some of the gore that coated the bridge deck. Bad news? Rain could make the surface slick, reduce visibility, and who knew? How these things reacted to storms. The wind picked up first, whipping across the bridge deck, rattling loose debris, carrying the stench of decay more strongly. Then the thunder started, low rumbles that vibrated through the truck's frame. The biters reacted instantly. The sound agitated them. They started moving more erratically, moaning louder, congregating in confused clusters. Maria signaled me, pointing frantically toward the western bridge tower. I followed her gaze. Something was happening up there. Figures moving on the maintenance ladders, rappelling down the massive suspension cables. Military? Rescuers? My heart leaped, but the hope was short-lived. Through the binoculars, I saw they weren't military. They wore civilian clothes, rappelling gear. Other survivors trapped on the upper levels of the tower, trying to reach the road deck. There were maybe 6 of them, descending slowly, carefully. 2, slowly. The thunder, the wind, the general agitation of the horde had drawn attention. Biters clustered at the base of the tower, looking up, moaning, reaching. One of the rappellers slipped, penduluming wildly before regaining control. But the sudden movement was like blood in the water for the biters below. They surged forward, clawing uselessly at the steel support structure. Then the rain started. Not a gentle shower, but a sudden, violent downpour. Fat, heavy drops hammered against the windshield, instantly obscuring my view. The wind howled, shaking the entire rig. Lightning flashed, momentarily illuminating the bridge in stark white, followed by deafening thunderclaps that seemed to shake the very foundations of the St. Jude. The biters went into a frenzy. The storm seemed to overload their degraded senses. They charged blindly, slamming into cars, into each other, their moans rising to shrieks that were barely audible over the storm's roar. The repellers were caught in the open now, only halfway down. I watched, helpless, as the horde below somehow managed to start climbing the lower supports, their unnatural movements aided by the driving rain and the chaos. One repeller screamed, as grasping hands pulled him from his rope. He fell, not into the water, but onto the concrete base of the tower, instantly adding to the feeding frenzy. The others tried to rappel faster, but the biters were scaling the structure with impossible speed. Another flash of lightning revealed the horrifying scene. The remaining repellers, overwhelmed, pulled apart on the cables themselves, their screams swallowed by the thunder. I recoiled from the windshield, heart pounding, stomach churning. Rescue wasn't coming. The bridge wasn't just a trap, it was a meat grinder. The storm raged, turning the bridge deck into a slick, treacherous landscape. Visibility dropped to near zero. I couldn't see Maria's car anymore, couldn't see anything. Beyond the hammering rain on my glass, were the biters still out there? Or had the storm driven them to seek shelter? Shelter where? Under the vehicles? Inside them? The thought sent a fresh wave of fear through me. The CB crackled again, ACA, voice barely audible over the storm's fury. Mayday, mayday. St. Jude Bridge, structural integrity failing, repeat, structural integrity failing. Expansion joint near East Tower. Static claimed the rest. Structural integrity failing. The wind howled, and I felt the bridge deck shift. Beneath my wheels, a low groaning sound, deeper than the thunder, resonated up through the tires. This steel island wasn't just a prison. It might become our tomb. The storm was biblical. Rain lashed the cab, thunder shook the frame, and the wind felt strong enough to peel the paint off the trailer. The groaning sound intensified, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to come from the bridge's very bones. Was that transmission about structural failure real, or just more chaos? In the flashes of lightning, I could see the river below, churned into whitecaps looking impossibly far away. The intensity of the storm seemed to have a strange effect on the biters. The constant moaning lessened, replaced by sporadic, high-pitched shrieks that were somehow more disturbing. Visibility was still terrible, but occasionally, through the sheets of rain, I'd catch glimpses of movement. Hunched shapes huddled against vehicles, seeking meager shelter from the deluge. They didn't like the heavy rain, it seemed. Or maybe the noise and flashing lights disoriented them. An idea sparked. The trailer. If the biters were subdued by the storm, this might be my only chance to check it for useful supplies. The risk was immense, but staying put felt increasingly like a death sentence, especially if the bridge itself was compromised. "Maria," I shouted into the CB, hoping she could hear me over the storm. "Nightingale, you copy?" Static, then her voice, faint but clear. "Wanderer, I copy. What is it?" "Thinking of checking my trailer while the storm's heavy. Need to know if you see anything moving near my rig." A pause. "Negative, Wanderer. Rain's too heavy, visibility 0, but I wouldn't risk it. That structural report." "Got no choice," I cut her off. "Need supplies. If this bridge goes, we need to be ready to move. Keep watch if you can. Signal if you see anything." "Roger that. Be careful, Rick." She used my real name. I hadn't told her. Must have heard it on the CB earlier. Felt oddly personal, grounding. Rick. That was me. Not just Wanderer, the trucker handle. Okay, deep breath. I grabbed the tire iron, the mag light, and clipped the flare gun to my belt. Unlocking the door felt like signing my own death warrant. The wind tore at the door as I pushed it open, rain instantly soaking me. I swung down the steps, landing heavily on the slick asphalt. The noise of the storm was overwhelming out here. The wind howled through the bridge's superstructure. Rain hammered down, and thunder vibrated in my chest. I stayed low, pressing myself against the side of the cab, scanning the immediate area. Shapes huddled in the downpour. Biters, miserable and seemingly disoriented. Good. I moved quickly along the length of the truck, using the chassis for cover. Reached the trailer doors. The padlock was heavy-duty, but my keys were on the ring in my pocket. Fumbling with numb, wet fingers, I finally got it open. The heavy doors swung outward. The inside of the trailer was pitch black. I clicked on the mag light, sweeping the beam across rows upon rows of cardboard boxes. Electronics, televisions, computers, video game consoles. Useless. I moved deeper, checking the manifest taped to the wall. Anything else? Hidden compartments? Extra supplies? Nothing listed. Wait. At the very front of the trailer, tucked behind the last pallet, was something not on the manifest. A large, heavy wooden crate marked with stencils I didn't recognize. Not the manufacturer's logo, not the shipper's military markings? Maybe. Curiosity overriding caution, I grabbed the crowbar end of the tire iron and wedged it under the crate's lid. The wood splintered, nails screeching as I pried it open. Inside, nestled in dense packing foam, were not electronics, but rows of matte black rifle cases. My breath caught. These weren't hunting rifles, these looked military grade. M4 carbines, maybe? And beneath them, ammunition cans. Lots of them. What the hell was I really hauling? This wasn't a standard electronics shipment. This was something else entirely. Smuggled weapons? Black market tech? Whatever it was, it just became my best chance at survival. I grabbed one rifle case and 2 ammo cans, my heart pounding. This changed everything. I slammed the crate lid shut, not bothering to nail it down, and hurried back toward the trailer doors. That's when I saw it. Standing silhouetted against the lightning-lit chaos beyond the trailer was a biter. It hadn't been there moments ago. It was just inside the trailer, blocking my exit, head cocked as if listening to the storm, rain plastering. Its tattered clothes to its emaciated frame. It hadn't seen me yet in the darkness at the front of the trailer. My hand tightened on the tire iron. Too close for the rifle, even if I could get the case open in time. I needed to move fast, silent. Took a step back, deeper into the trailer's shadows, planning to circle around the pallets, use them as cover. But my foot slipped on the wet metal floor. I crashed into a stack of boxes, the noise echoing inside the trailer. The biter's head snapped around. Its eyes, milky white in the gloom, fixed on me. It let out a low, guttural moan, the sound amplified, in the enclosed space, and started shuffling towards me, arms outstretched, fingers crooked into claws. Trapped again, this time not just on the bridge, but inside my own trailer, with 53 feet of useless electronics between me and escape, and one of those things coming right for me. The biter lurched forward, its rotten teeth bared in a rictus grin, rainwater dripping from its decaying flesh mixed with something darker on the trailer floor. My maglite beam caught the glint of metal on its wrist, the broken half of a handcuff. Mike, the cop from the story I'd heard whispered on the CB hours ago, the one who supposedly turned in his patrol car. How had he gotten here? How had he gotten in here? No time for questions. Its unnatural speed caught me off guard again. It covered the distance between the pallets in shambling strides, faster than anything dead should move. I swung the tire iron, aiming for its head, but it ducked with surprising agility. The heavy metal bar whistling past where its skull should have been, it lunged, tackling me around the legs. We crashed to the floor amidst the scattered electronics, boxes. The stench of decay was overwhelming, gagging me. Its weight, though seemingly emaciated, was immense, pinning me down. Snapping teeth, stained black, were inches from my face. I shoved the maglite into its eye socket. It shrieked, a horrible, wet, gurgling sound, and recoiled slightly, giving me just enough space to bring my knee up hard into its chest. Ribs cracked audibly, but it barely seemed to notice. Its remaining hand, the one without the handcuff, clawed at my face. I turned my head, feeling sharp nails rake across my cheek, drawing blood. Panic surged. One scratch, one bite. I still had the tire iron. With a surge of adrenaline, I twisted, ramming the pointed end up under its jaw. Bone crunched. The biter froze, its jaw hanging slack, milky eyes wide. It wasn't down, but it was momentarily stunned. I shoved it off me, scrambling backward, grabbing for the rifle case. My fingers fumbled with the latches. Heavy-duty plastic built to withstand abuse, not built for speed opening during a zombie attack. The biter, formerly known as Mike, was already recovering, pushing itself up, the tire iron still protruding grotesquely from beneath its chin. It ignored the impalement, focusing only on me, the living meal. Click, click. The latches finally. I flipped open the case, revealing the M4 carbine nestled in its foam cutout. Beside it, a loaded magazine. My hands shook as I slammed the magazine into the receiver, chambered around. The familiar clack-clack of the charging handle was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. The biter lunged again. I didn't aim for the head this time. No time. Fired 3 rounds rapid fire into its center mass. The impact shredded its already rotting torso, throwing it back against a pallet of TVs. It collapsed in a heap, gore splattering across the cardboard boxes. It still twitched, fingers clawing weakly at the air. One more round, this time to the head. Silence. I lay there on the trailer floor for a moment, gasping for breath, the rifle heavy in my hands. Rain hammered on the roof. Thunder rattled the walls. The smell of gunpowder mixed with the stench of the biter. Outside, the storm raged, and somewhere beyond the trailer doors, the bridge groaned. Gathering myself, I grabbed the 2 ammo cans and slung the rifle over my shoulder using the attached strap. Time to get back to the cab. I edged toward the trailer doors, peering out cautiously. The torrential rain continued, visibility still near zero. The shapes I'd seen huddled earlier were gone, perhaps driven to seek better shelter by the sheer force of the storm. Or maybe drawn away by the sound of my gunfire. Either way, the immediate path back looked clear. I slipped out, pulling the trailer doors shut but not bothering with the padlock. Speed was more important now. Keeping low, rifle ready, I moved back along the side of the truck. The cab seemed miles away. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the bridge deck, and my blood ran cold. They weren't gone. They were climbing. Dozens of them. Scaling the suspension cables, crawling up the support beams, somehow finding purchase on the wet, slick steel. They moved like spiders, unnaturally fast, their forms silhouetted against the flashes of lightning. They were heading for the top of the bridge towers. Why? I scrambled the rest of the way, hauled myself up into the cab, slammed and locked the door. My heart hammered against my ribs. What were they doing? What was up there? The CB crackled. Maria's voice laced with panic. Rick, look up, the towers! I followed her terrified gaze upward, peering through the rain-streaked windshield. High above, near the peak of the nearest suspension tower, figures were gathering. Dozens of them, silhouetted against the stormy sky. They weren't just climbing. They were congregating, waiting. And then the groaning sound intensified, not thunder this time. It was the bridge itself. A long, tearing sound of metal under stress. A section of the road deck, maybe 100 yards ahead of me, buckled visibly, sagging downward. The cars on that section slid, crashing into each. Others, some tipping precariously close to the edge. The structural failure wasn't a rumor. It was happening. And those things on the towers, were they somehow causing it? Or just drawn to the highest point before the inevitable collapse? Whatever the reason, the St. Jude Bridge was dying, and we were still trapped on it. The section of buckled road ahead effectively cut off any chance of driving further, even if the wreckage at the end was cleared. The St. Jude Bridge was fractured. I watched in horror as a minivan perched precariously on the sagging section, slid slowly, agonizingly, towards the gap that had opened up. It hung there for a moment, balanced on the edge, then plunged into the churning river below, disappearing without a trace. My rig, thankfully, was on the stable section, before the buckle. But for how long? The groaning continued, a horrible, deep vibration that resonated through my teeth. The entire structure felt unstable, swaying more than it should in the wind. "Maria," I yelled into the CB. "Status, you okay?" "Okay for now." Her voice was shaky. "Rick, that section, it's getting wider. We need to get off this bridge." "How?" I scanned the chaos. The biters were still congregating on the towers, seemingly oblivious to the failing structure beneath them. Maybe the storm and the height confused their basic instincts? Below, on the road deck, the rain had lessened slightly, but the biters who hadn't climbed were becoming more active again, drawn by the sounds of shifting metal and collapsing pavement. An idea, born of desperation, formed. The maintenance, catwalks, beneath the road deck. I'd seen access hatches near the expansion joints. If we could reach one, maybe we could cross underneath the buckled section, reach the far side of the bridge. It was insane, crawling around under a collapsing bridge during a zombie apocalypse. But what choice did we have? "Maria," I transmitted, "see the expansion joint about 20 yards ahead of your car? There should be a maintenance hatch nearby. Can you see it?" A pause then. "Yes, I see it. Heavy steel grate." "Okay, new plan. We go for the catwalks. We move on foot under the bridge deck. It's our only shot." "Are you crazy? What about them?" She meant the biters on the road. "Guriwas, we create a diversion," I said, already formulating the next step. "My truck. I can use the horn, the lights, draw them away from the hatch area long enough for us to get down." "And us? How do we get to the hatch from our cars?" "Good question. Opening car doors now would be suicide." I looked at the space between vehicles. Narrow, but maybe passable if we crawled. "Stay low, crawl between the cars, meet me near the sedan directly in front of you. I'll provide covering fire if needed. Got the rifle now." "A rifle? Where did you—" "Long story, can you do it?" Another pause. I could almost hear her weighing the terror of leaving her car against the terror of staying on the collapsing bridge. Yes, I can do it. Okay, on my signal. Wait. For the horn. I took the M4, checked the magazine again. Extra ammo cans were in my backpack along with water, MREs, first aid, flashlight, flare gun. Everything I might need for a subterranean bridge crossing. I slung the rifle, grabbed the tire iron again, quieter for close work if needed. Time to prep the diversion. I reached for the truck horn pull cord. This was it. One blast to draw their attention, then silence gives us maybe 30 seconds before they investigate the source. Had to be timed perfectly. I looked towards Maria's car, saw her give a small thumbs up through the rain-streaked window. Deep breath. I yanked the cord. The Freightliner's air horn blasted, a deafening sound that cut through the storm's remnants. Instantly, every biter on the road deck within earshot snapped its head towards my truck. Their moans intensified as they began shuffling, lurching, running towards the source of the noise. Now! I yelled into the CB, simultaneously unlocking my door and grabbing my gear. I swung down, rifle ready. Maria's car door opened a crack. She slipped out, low to the ground, moving fast towards the car ahead. From another car nearby, a man emerged. Older, maybe 50s, clutching a briefcase. He saw Maria, saw me, seemed to understand, and started crawling too. Another survivor. Maybe. The first biters reached my truck, pounding on the locked doors, clawing at the metal. The diversion was working. I scanned the path towards the hatch. Clear for now, but more were coming. Maria and the man reached the designated meeting point, huddled behind a minivan. I started moving towards them, staying low, weaving between the stopped cars. A biter stumbled out from between an SUV and a pickup, right in my path. No time to aim the rifle. I swung the tire iron, connecting solidly with its skull. It dropped, silently. Another appeared on my right. This one I dispatched with a quick silenced thwack from the tire iron's heavy end. Stealth was key now. The rifle was for emergencies only. I reached Maria and the man. He introduced himself quickly. Name was Arthur, an accountant trying to get home. His eyes were wide with terror, but he was moving, functioning. The hatch is just ahead, I whispered. Stay low, follow me. We crawled the last few yards. The hatch was a heavy steel grate, bolted down. Arthur fumbled with his briefcase. Maybe I can... No time, I hissed. The bolts looked rusted, old. I jammed the crowbar end of the tire iron under the edge, putting my weight into it. Metal screamed in protest. Rusted threads snapped. The grate lifted an inch. Enough. Get ready, I told them. The biters, attracted by the horn, were getting closer, shuffling between the cars, moaning. I heaved again. The grate lifted further. A dark opening appeared, leading down into blackness. The smell that wafted up was damp metal and river water. Maria, you first, I urged. She didn't hesitate, sliding through the opening and disappearing below. Arthur followed, dropping his briefcase with a clang that echoed horribly. Shit. Noise. A biter shrieked nearby, head snapping towards the sound. More. Moans joined in. They knew where we were. Go. I shoved Arthur the rest of the way down, then turned, raising the rifle. 3 biters were staggering towards us, maybe 20 feet away. I fired, 3 quick shots aiming for heads. 2 dropped. The third stumbled, hit in the shoulder, but kept coming. Behind it, more shapes emerged from between the cars. No time for finesse. I sprayed the area, emptying half the magazine, forcing them back momentarily. Then I swung around, grabbed the edge of the opening, and dropped through, pulling the heavy grate partially closed behind me. Not locked, but hopefully enough to slow them down. I landed hard on a narrow metal catwalk. Below me, maybe 10 feet down, was another wider catwalk. Maria and Arthur were already there, staring up, their faces pale in the beam of Maria's small flashlight. Above, I could hear the biters scratching and pounding on the grate. We need to move, I shouted over the groaning of the bridge structure. Follow the catwalk east, towards the far shore. The catwalk was narrow, slick with rain and condensation. Rusty railings offered the only handhold. Below us, through the gaps in the metal grating, the river churned gray and angry, 150 feet down. The wind howled through the bridge's underbelly, threatening to tear us from our precarious perch. Above, the sound of pounding on the access hatch intensified. They weren't giving up. The underside of the St. Jude Bridge was a maze of steel, beams, pipes, and electrical conduits, all coated in decades of grime and rust. The main maintenance catwalk ran the length of the bridge, suspended maybe 20 feet below the road deck. It was about 4 feet wide, with rusty railings on either side, thankfully. The noise from above was terrifying. The constant groaning of stressed metal, the drumming of rain finding its way through gaps, the scraping and pounding at the access hatch we just used, and occasionally the sickening thud of a car sliding off the buckled section into the river below. Our flashlights cut weak beams through the oppressive darkness. Maria had a small keychain light. Arthur had his phone, battery dying fast. And I had my heavy mag light, plus the weapon light on the M4. We moved single file, me taking point, Arthur in the middle, Maria bringing up the rear. Every footstep on the metal grating echoed eerily in the cavernous space. How far to the other side? Arthur panted, clutching his briefcase like a life raft. He wasn't built for this kind of exertion. Mile, maybe a little more, I estimated, but we have to get past the buckled section first. The pounding on the hatch above us stopped. For a terrifying moment, I thought they'd given up. Then came a different sound, metal screeching, tearing. They weren't trying to lift the grate anymore. They were ripping it apart. "Move faster," I urged, picking up the pace despite the treacherous footing. We reached the area directly beneath the collapsed section of road deck. Twisted steel beams hung precariously, groaning under the strain. Chunks of concrete and debris littered the catwalk. We had to climb over mangled pipes and dodge hanging wires. The air here smelled different: ozone, burning rubber, and something metallic. Lightning flashed again, momentarily illuminating the chaos through gaps in the superstructure. In that brief flash, I saw them. Not above us anymore. They were climbing down the outside of the bridge supports, somehow finding purchase on the vertical beams, moving with that same unnatural, jerky agility. They were heading for the catwalk. "They're coming!" Maria screamed, pointing her weak light beam towards the nearest support pillar. Figures were descending like grotesque insects, silhouetted against the stormy sky. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. We were exposed on the narrow catwalk. I raised the M4, sighting down the barrel. Arthur whimpered, pressing himself against the railing. The first biter dropped from a beam onto the catwalk about 30 yards ahead of us, landing with a sickening crunch, but immediately scrambling to its feet. More followed, dropping from conduits, swinging down from cables. They were cutting off our path forward. Behind us, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. They were coming from both directions. "Rick, what do we do?" Maria cried, her voice thin against the wind. "Think, analyze, adapt." My training kicked in. "Arthur, give me your briefcase." Why? Just do it." I snatched the heavy leather case from his grasp. "Maria, flashlight on them. Keep them illuminated." I hefted the briefcase. It was solid, heavy, probably full of financial reports or whatever accountants carried. I waited until 3 biters were clustered together, advancing slowly down the catwalk towards us. Then with all my strength, I swung the briefcase like a pendulum, releasing it at the peak of the arc. It flew through the air, end over end, striking the lead biter squarely in the chest. The force knocked it backward into the 2 behind it. All 3 tumbled, shrieking, over the low railing and into the darkness below. A distant splash confirmed their fate. It bought us maybe 10 seconds. More were coming. "The flares!" Maria shouted, reminding me of the gun still clipped to my belt. Right. Flares, bright light, noise, might disorient them, buy us more time. I drew the flare gun, loaded a cartridge, aimed it down the catwalk towards the advancing group, and fired. The flare erupted with a blinding white light and a loud hiss, ricocheting off the steel beams. The effect on the biters was immediate. They recoiled, shielding their vacant eyes, moaning and stumbling in confusion. "Move! Now!" I yelled. We scrambled forward, past the disoriented biters, climbing over debris, hearts pounding. Behind us, I could hear the pursuit resuming as the flare burned out. We cleared the damaged section, the catwalk becoming slightly more stable again. The far end of the bridge seemed agonizingly distant. We were maybe halfway across. "How many flares?" "Left," Maria asked, breathing heavily. "2," I answered, reloading. We kept moving, the adrenaline pushing us past exhaustion. The rain had eased to a drizzle, but the wind still buffered us. Occasionally, a biter would drop onto the catwalk ahead, or behind, forcing us to dispatch it quickly and quietly with the tire iron or knife to conserve ammo and avoid drawing more attention. Arthur was struggling, his breathing ragged, but he kept moving, propelled by sheer terror. Then we saw the lights. Not the city lights behind us, but headlights ahead. On the far side of the bridge, vehicles were moving. A military convoy, judging by the shapes. They were setting up a checkpoint right at the bridge exit. Hope surged, but it was quickly tempered by a new horror. The biters on the towers, the ones who had climbed earlier, were now descending, not towards the road deck, but rappelling, and climbing down the support structures, heading directly for the catwalks, cutting off our path to the exit. They moved with horrifying purpose, converging on the eastern end of the bridge like spiders sealing off a web. And between us and the military checkpoint was the largest concentration of climbing biters yet. We were caught between the horde behind us and the descending spiders ahead. The catwalk was a death trap, closing in from all sides. The military checkpoint at the eastern end of the bridge was both salvation and another obstacle. Soldiers, in tactical gear, were setting up barricades, their movements efficient, professional, but they were focused on the road deck above, unaware of the horror unfolding beneath their feet on the catwalks. And between us and them swarmed the descending horde. "They're trapping us," Arthur gasped, pointing a shaking finger ahead. Biters dropped onto the catwalk with increasing frequency, their jerky movements horribly silhouetted against the distant checkpoint lights. Behind us, the scraping and moaning grew louder. We were pinned, boxed in on a narrow strip of metal high above the river. "Second flare," I shouted, loading the gun. "Aim high, try to get the military's attention." I fired the flare upwards, towards the road deck. It streaked into the night sky, exploding in a shower of red sparks directly above the checkpoint. Soldiers looked up, confused. Some pointed. But their attention was quickly diverted back to the road deck, as a fresh wave of biters emerged from the wreckage near the bridge exit, charging their position. Gunfire erupted above us, heavy caliber stuff. The soldiers were too busy fighting for their own survival to notice ours. The flare's light, however, had an unintended consequence. It illuminated the catwalk clearly, revealing our position to the descending horde. They shrieked in unison, a sound that chilled me to the bone, and scrambled faster down the support beams, converging on us. "Rick, we're surrounded!" Maria cried, her flashlight beam dancing frantically between the approaching threats. Arthur sank to his knees, defeated. "We're not gonna make it." "Get up, Arthur." I hauled him to his feet. "We don't stop. Not now." But where could we go? Forward was blocked. Backward was blocked. Above was a firefight. Below was a 150-foot drop into a raging river. Think. There had to be another way. The bridge structure itself. I scanned the massive steel beams around us. Ladders? Access panels, anything? My flashlight beam caught something. A smaller auxiliary catwalk running perpendicular to the main one, leading towards the center of the bridge structure, towards the massive concrete pier supporting the suspension tower. It looked even, narrower, rustier, but it was a different direction. "This way," I pointed. "Follow me." We scrambled onto the auxiliary catwalk. It swayed sickeningly under our weight. We moved faster now, fueled by desperation. The sounds of the biters followed us, some attempting to navigate the narrower path, others trying to climb directly along the underside of the road deck above. The catwalk ended abruptly at the colossal concrete pier. Dead end. Or was it? Embedded in the concrete was a series of heavy iron rungs, a maintenance ladder leading down. The side of the pier, disappearing into the darkness towards the water below. "Down," I yelled. "It's our only shot." Going down seemed insane. Where did it lead? Could we even survive the climb? But the biters were closing in on the auxiliary catwalk behind us. I went first, testing each rung before putting my weight on it. They were slick with rain and algae but seemed solid enough. Rifle slung tight, I descended into the darkness, my flashlight beam cutting a small circle below. Maria followed, then Arthur, moving agonizingly slowly. Above, the first biters reached the pier, looking down, moaning. They couldn't easily navigate the vertical ladder, but they started throwing themselves off the catwalk, aiming for us. Woon landed on the rungs just above Arthur, showering him with gore. He screamed, losing his grip. "Arthur!" Maria shrieked. I looked up, saw him dangling by one hand. The biter clawed at him. Without thinking, I aimed the M4 upward with one hand, firing a burst. The rounds tore through the biter, sending it plummeting into the darkness, but the recoil nearly threw me off the ladder. Arthur scrabbled, found his footing again. "Keep moving," I yelled. We descended further, the river growing closer, the sound of churning water louder. How far down did this ladder go? Did it reach the water, a boat dock, or just end mid-air? My flashlight beam finally hit something solid below. A concrete platform built around the base of the pier, just above the waterline. It looked like an inspection platform, maybe for engineers checking the foundations. There was even a small, dilapidated motorboat tied to a rusty cleat. Unbelievable. We scrambled onto the platform, legs shaking from the climb. The boat looked ancient, paint peeling, engine cowling battered. Would it even start? Above us, the beaters were figuring out the ladder, descending slowly but surely. We had maybe minutes. Arthur fumbled with the boat's mooring ropes while I checked the engine. Outboard motor, pull start. Tank felt like it had some fuel. Praying, I gave the cord a hard yank. Nothing. Again. A sputter. Third time. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life, spewing blue smoke. "Get in!" Maria and Arthur tumbled into the small boat. I untied the last rope, shoved us off the platform, and jumped in, taking the tiller. The current caught us immediately, pulling us away from the bridge pier and out into the main channel. Above, the St. Jude Bridge groaned one last, long, agonized sound. Silhouetted against the first hints of dawn, the eastern tower, laden with the weight of the dead, began to tilt slowly, gracefully before collapsing inward. Steel screamed. Concrete exploded. The entire eastern span of the bridge ripped free, plunging into the river with a thunderous roar that sent waves crashing over our small boat. We watched, numb, as the place that had been our prison for the EOE. Last 12 hours destroyed itself. The military checkpoint was gone, swallowed by the collapse. The biters, both on the road deck and the catwalks, vanished into the churning water and debris. We had survived. We were off the bridge. The small motorboat chugged slowly downriver, away from the ruins of the St. Jude Bridge. Dawn was breaking properly now, painting the sky in bruised purples and grays. The storm had passed, leaving behind an eerie calm, broken only by the sputtering engine and the distant sounds of chaos still echoing from the city. Maria huddled in the bow, wrapped in a discarded tarp we'd found in the boat, staring back at the apocalyptic skyline. Arthur sat numbly amidships, clutching his knees, his expensive suit ruined, his face slack with shock. I kept us near the shore, avoiding the main channel and its debris. We were alive. We were off the bridge. But the relief was hollow, heavy. Looking back at the city, at the smoke columns rising into the morning air, at the half-collapsed bridge vanishing behind a bend in the river, I knew this wasn't the end. It was barely the beginning. The rifle lay across my knees, strangely heavy now. The ammo cans felt like anchors. What had I been hauling? Why the weapons? Questions for another time, maybe a time that would never come. Right now, all that mattered was the next step. Find shelter, find supplies, figure out how to survive. In a world where bridges collapse and the dead walk. My phone was useless, waterlogged. The CB was back on the ruined bridge. We were cut off, adrift. The city behind us was a tomb. What lay ahead? More of the same? Or something worse? I looked at Maria, then at Arthur. Strangers brought together by catastrophe. Our shared ordeal. On the bridge had forged a bond, but what now? Could we rely on each other? Could we even survive another day? The boat puttered on, carrying us into the unknown. The water slapped against the hull, a steady, somber rhythm. 12 hours. That's all it took for the world to end. 12 hours trapped on a bridge, watching civilization crumble. I thought about my rig, the Wanderer, now likely at the bottom of the river or crushed in the wreckage. 20 years of my life gone in an instant. But I was alive. Maria was alive. Arthur was alive. For now. In this new world, maybe that was the only thing that mattered. Survive today. Worry about tomorrow when it comes. The St. Jude Bridge was behind us, a monument to the day everything changed. What lay ahead was uncharted territory, a landscape of fear and uncertainty. But we were moving, and as long as we were moving, there was still a chance. The first day was over. The long haul had just begun.